Hey guys, Tommy, Modern Canine Solutions. I got my buddy here, Sky Soldier Dog Training, right? Did I say it right?
That's right.
All right, cool. So he's been in the game for a minute. He just recently opened up a facility in Sunset Hills, I believe.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So tell us a little about yourself. Like, obviously, we recently met personally, actually in person this month at our Veterans Night, which was super cool. Yeah. We've been talking on Instagram for a minute though. How'd you get into dog stuff? Obviously, Sky Dog or Sky Soldier, you're airborne. Yeah. Which I appreciate the leash you gave me today. That was super cool. I should have brought it in to show people. But yeah, who are you? Where'd you come from? What's going on?
Sure. Well, I'm Brandon. I own Sky Soldier Dog Training. For me, dogs have been every facet of my life. Like you said, I was born into it. Yeah. So grandma and grandpa started running, breeding, training dogs in 1955. So well before the internet, right? Well before Skinner, made his quadrants and all of that stuff. So it was a very unique experience for me to be born into a house that was breeding dogs. We had 2 ferrets, we had a potbelly pig, and we had a bunch of Shar-Peis. Which is it's a real weird breed to have when you have kids. Right. But grandma, she kind of took the role because my parents were young when they had me. So she kind of took on the role to raise me and was very influential in that. And having dogs around as a young kid, and then having somebody that grew up in a different time and a different generation that just tells you the facts, doesn't sugarcoat it. It was very telling for me to interact with animals, because nowadays we've got, all the Disney movies that impact our emotional feelings towards dogs.
Commercials,
right. We've got people getting attacked by bears, bisons, because they think that they're cute. They're cut, which they are, but they're still animals, And so for having that perspective shared from my grandmother at an early age, like, this dog is an animal. Right. And not only that, I'm breeding it. Right. I'm breeding it for a family. And if you make this dog bite you, I'm going to have to put it down. Right. This is exactly what she said. She said, if you make this dog bite you, I have to take it outside and shoot it. I'm 5 years old. Right. Okay, grandma, I'm not going to do it.
Right. So we got ingrained in your brain.
Right. Yeah. Right away, and so it's been in there. And so then, going through life, when I was a teenager, I went into youth ministry. I wanted to be a youth pastor. Very cool. Just because, for me growing up, I wasn't very understood. I was a wild child. I was very loud about everything wrong that I did. And so I felt like being a young adult, I could help those teenagers that were struggling. Absolutely. And so going on mission trips, we would be in Tuba City, Arizona, and it's a native reservation out there, and they have tons of feral dogs. Yeah. And it's to the point of where you walk in and they're like, bend down to pick up a rock because these dogs will bite you. Like, they just tell you to bend down and pretend like you're picking up a rock because it scares the dogs. Yeah. And, meanwhile, me being me, I'm like, it's okay. It's just feral dogs. It's no big deal. And so there's video and pictures of me running around in Tuba City with these feral dogs. Nice. Like, the worst thing that happened is I had fleas. That's the worst thing that happened out of it. So, there's another experience. I can't tell you how many times I got grounded for bringing dogs into the yard and feeding kibble out of my parents' dishes and things. They're like, where's this kibble coming from? I just saved up my coins from the laundry, and now I can buy some kibble. So it's been in every facet. And then, fast forward to the time in the Army, I didn't have any interest in combat arms. I'm not a very violent person. Now I can be defensive, but I'm not seeking violence. That's not my goal. But
you'll meet it if you have to, but you're not looking for a fight.
Right. Yeah. And so, I wanted to do a tech job. I wanted to do something so that I could, finish college while I was in, and the old recruiter trick, it's not available, and ended up going infantry. Yeah. Ended up going through infantry, doing really well because I was 25. Started my first business when I was 19. That's personal training. That's where I first got my go at teaching people right after youth ministry. going into personal training.
Yeah, for
You're
sure.
just teaching. And so it made me a little bit more mature than everybody else that's in basic training.
Well, especially going into combat arms where most of them are 18, 19, 20, you know, gung-ho, let's get them.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
Yeah, when it's very emotional. And I'm sure this will be like, you know, the catalyst of our conversation is emotion versus logic.
Right, for sure.
You know, because we both deal with dangerous dogs on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And if you're emotional, you're screwed.
100%.
You're getting bit every time.
Right.
That dog is going to take advantage of you. So, you know,
especially in the beginning stages, right?
Yeah.
Like once you establish the relationship, then you can bring in some emotional side of it, but you still have to be very objective.
Right.
And you know, I don't want to cut you off, but I feel like a lot of pet owners lose it there because and when I do my go home lessons, like I do a very in-depth, like 2 to 3 hour long go home lesson.
Yeah.
And part of it is like explaining objectiveness versus emotion. You as a pet owner come into this relationship emotionally charged because you want a buddy, you want a companion, you want a fur mate, you know, or fur buddy, whatever you want to call it. And then when I come in this relationship, I'm coming at it from an objective situation or objective perspective. But I feel like a lot of trainers lose it there, right?
Yeah.
Because there's such a divide between the household, which is emotionally charged, and the trainer who's objectively directed.
Right.
When they bring the two together, a lot of trainers miss.
Right.
Because they can't teach how to balance the emotional with the objectiveness.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, I mean, it's kind of like that, you know, if the bath water is freezing, turn it on boiling. That's not the answer. You know, and if it's boiling,
you can't go from one extreme to the other.
Right. You know, there's areas of gray in there.
Yeah.
You know, and the way that I approach it usually with my dog owners is like, you know, think of earning it. You know, you're getting the cart before the horse.
Right.
You're saying, hey, let's party, let's hang out, let's get crazy. But then you're like, well, I don't like the dog being crazy. Right. So we got to earn it.
Yeah. 100%.
You know, establish that structure first. You know, there's going back to grandma, you know, that's the only woman that I would never let go to voicemail. You know, just because she set the tone so early with me. For sure. You know, and it established that this is the person that I follow.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and so going into the Army, being a little bit more mature because I'm a little more seasoned than the 18-year-old.
You're older and you've had more experiences.
Right. Yeah. So going there, still have no idea what I'm doing. I'm like, I don't want to be infantry.
None of us did.
I don't want to be an ape. You know, I like working out. I like
Knuckle
yelling.
draggers.
Right. You know, I like shooting guns, but it's just not. It's not for me. But it just fit.
Yeah.
You know, being a little more mature, I could see the benefit of the practice, the procedure, the consistency.
Repetition.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, we think of Forrest Gump, you know, assembling the rifle. There's a purpose to all of that.
100%.
And it's been carried over to where I am today, you know, to where I'm so structured, so by the book to create that outcome, just like you're saying, like we want to create that. And so it helped. And then going from there.
Well, and it's replicatable.
Right.
That's the key to it, right?
Right.
And that's why I feel like boot camp is so successful through all the departments. It's not just Army or Marine Corps, right? Like there's a system in place because it's repeatable. Yeah. So that we get the same outcome. Now, there are the percentages that fall off that can't assimilate to that environment or that what it is, right? And those guys get weeded out really, really quickly in boot camp. But if you can fit the repetition, you can be replicated into the image of a soldier or a Marine or an airman. Then now you carry on to the next stage, right? Which is no different than dog training. Right. With dog training, we want a repeatable system that you can use. Now, granted, just like people, the percentage is there that cookie cutter dog training isn't going to work for every dog. Which one of the big things I harp on is I hate cookie cutter dog trainers. And the big boxes are notorious for that. With a purpose, right? So if we look into business side of things, right, you have to have a repeatable system that works. So if I do A, B, C, D, E, F, G for every single dog that comes across my plate or across my training floor, then I know where the inadequacies are is either the trainer or the dog. Right. And if you're big box, you can blame it on the dog because the trainers know A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Right. Then it's like, oh, I'm sorry, your dog just doesn't fit the mold.
It's untrainable.
Correct. And then you get guys like me and you that let's go. Yeah. I've never refused a dog in 10 years.
Yeah, it's on my website. Right. Any breed, any age,
100%.
Any issue. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Because you take that wide lens approach. You know, what is our end outcome? What do we want? And in how we get there, it's subjective based on the thing in front of us.
Correct.
You know, and so
that's your mission now.
Right.
No different than being in the military.
Yeah, absolutely. So from there we go to airborne school. You know, and
is that a selection process, or do you just like sign up for it?
No. Well, I mean, I guess it's selected on merit, like meritocracy. So, you know, whoever has the highest PT score, whoever. I mean, I was a platoon sergeant for basic training right out the gate.
Okay.
They're like, this guy doesn't seem to care that we're yelling at him, and I'm like, oh, bullshit, I care.
Right.
I'm
not
like,
showing.
I'm just not showing.
Keeping my emotions in check.
You can't kill me. Right. I know that, so I'm going to be chill about it. But, you know, because of PT scores, because of shooting, because of leadership, they're like, hey, we'll send you to airborne school.
Nice.
Now, this is interesting because we're kind of talking about the dynamic of basic training and how it turns people from sloppy, inconsistent, lazy into structured, driven, capable human beings. But there is a difference, I feel like, between like an infantry basic training and then you go to like in the Army, it's AIT for your job.
Your secondary school,
right?
Or whatever,
You know, and I noticed this when I went from basic training into airborne school, because airborne school, most people think it's this tough, challenging thing. It's not. It's a gentleman's course. You know, I'm coming right out of basic training, people screaming in my ear, and I'm like, I better run.
So you went to airborne school before you went to AIT, or did you go to AIT first?
No, we do OSIT, so it's one station unit training for infantry. So you do 14 weeks in the same place.
Oh, okay.
And then I went to airborne school.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so by the time I got to airborne school, you know, I'm so brainwashed, like they could have told me to run through fire, you know, and
you would have been a Marine.
Probably. I would have eaten crayons and do it. Yeah, for sure. But the thing that happened when I went to airborne school is there was a little bit of relax.
Yeah.
There was a little bit of like, hey, there's a Subway down the road
and
there's Xboxes. And I'm like, what? Xbox? Does that still exist? You know, like 14 weeks, I forgot everything, you know, and so that little bit of relax, and I've seen this, you know, when I went into the reserves and whatnot, and was a first sergeant for a field medical hospital. In those support classes, in those support jobs, they relinquish almost like you've made it by the time you get to job.
Yeah.
And you haven't made it.
Yeah.
You're still a PFC.
Right.
You're still a private.
Right.
You haven't made it. Just because you passed basic training doesn't mean anything.
Right.
You know, and so when I went to airborne school, it was a little bit of a culture shock because I'm like, well, this is a E8 and they're eating pudding and slopping over their belt like they're fat.
Yeah.
And they're falling out of the runs.
Or
and
you're
they
getting
can't
across
do
guys that are coming from other branches that are going to airborne school, and you're seeing the differences in that too.
Oh, yeah.
I never got to go, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
well, my VA rep would tell you it's not worth it. My chiropractor would tell you that it's not worth it. But
well, I mean, I rode on a Zodiacs, which is probably just as bad, getting slammed in the face by the waves and slammed into the gunnel tube of the Zodiac.
Yeah.
You get your shit kicked out of you.
So airborne school, no big deal. Do my 5 jumps. You know, I don't even think I remember the first one, but I just go right out, get it hammered into my chest. Yep. So they
pin you there?
Yeah,
that's a pinning thing.
Yeah. The infantry black hats will do it.
Nice.
Yeah, but if you're not infantry, they probably won't. They'll just hand it to you. But infantry guys are
softy.
Like, let me put it right in there. Yeah. So from there we end up going to a program called RASP, Ranger Assessment Selection Program.
Okay.
No idea what it is.
Right.
No idea. And this is how prepared I was for infantry basic training. I watched this Discovery Channel program called Surviving the Cut.
Okay.
And it's following the 62 days of Ranger School.
Yeah.
Which is that leadership course. And I thought I was going to Ranger School. So here in St. Louis County, I'm doing a ruck around Melville's track with an old Alice pack that I got from the Uncle Sam's.
Yeah.
I've got 40 pounds in it, and I'm doing like
laps.
12 laps around this track, just getting prepared for Ranger School.
Yeah.
I even went out on Grants Trail before going to basic training to practice for this. And I get to RASP, and it's not Ranger School at all. It's tan berets. It's Pat Tillman. It's all of that. And I'm like, what the hell did I get into?
Yeah.
Because again, I'm not... Yeah, I was in the combat arms. Yes, I was in the infantry, but I'm not that guy that's at the bar going, "Hey, I need to fight this guy just because I need to feel something."
Right.
I feel all my feelings. I don't need to do that.
Right.
I'm good. My ego is in check.
For sure.
And so I get there and I'm just like, this place isn't for me. And so I quit. One of the hardest decisions that I've ever made, and one of those decisions where I live it every day because I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I spent 9 years in the military total, and I'm like, if there's one decision that I regret, it was quitting.
Yeah.
You know, and it was because I had gotten so soft in airborne school.
Yeah.
If I would have gone from infantry basic training straight into Ranger Assessment Selection Program, I'd have done it with my eyes closed.
Right.
They'd have told me, like, eat rocks, and I'd been like, oh, here we go. I'm going to eat these rocks.
But you got the easy life.
But I got that easy feel. I got that, hey, you made it, and it was boom.
Yeah.
Catalyst. Took everything away from me.
Back to dog training. Dog comes home after dog training, and this is what happens. Right?
Absolutely. Well, people ask, like, where's the failure at with dog training? Well, the failure is at when you put something that they're not ready for.
Right.
You go to a place that they're and I talk about this in the lesson. I do like an 80-20 split. When I teach people, I talk about 80% easy, 20% challenge, because the American Psychology Department says that it's 85-15 for humans. So you need to make sure that their tasks are 85% easy and 15% challenge.
Yeah.
That's how little we think of other humans. So for me, with dogs, I'm saying 80% of the task needs to be easy. That's why you won't see me out at a dog park training a dog, a fearful, reactive dog. I don't need clicks.
Right.
I want the dog to be better, because the whole reason I got into this business was to help dog owners.
Yeah, 100%.
Keep the dog, keep them alive.
Yeah.
Don't euthanize a dog because it jumped on somebody. That's stupid.
Right.
We can fix that.
Right.
We can absolutely fix that.
Yeah, 100%.
So, going through that, it was a soul crusher, because I'd never quit anything else in my life before that, and I'm with a bunch of losers, and I'm cutting grass with scissors at regimental headquarters, because you're a quitter, so that's what you got to do.
Right.
You got to earn your penance. And so from there, I ended up getting orders to 173rd out in Italy, and the platoon that I went to, they had just gotten back from a real nasty deployment in Afghanistan. And I get there, PFC, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to embrace this. I'm going to be an infantryman. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go all in. If I deploy, we're going to do it. We're going to take it. That's where I'm at. And so I get to my platoon, and they just got back from one of the hardest deployments. They lost their platoon sergeant. It was a red on blue. They lost the civilian that was attached. The interpreter ended up turning and shooting, and like it was a huge mess. And I feel honored to be in that platoon.
Right.
And I feel honored to be led by those guys and taught by those guys. I feel honored to earn it. And I think that's an important thing that we can talk about, specifically as being veterans, is in that culture, is earning your position, earning your place.
You earn
everything. Because I was 25, PFC, I didn't earn shit. To
that point.
Right. I mean, 18 weeks prior, 19 weeks prior, I was at home sitting on the couch. These guys, even though they're younger than me, most of them were younger than me.
Yeah.
They were in the middle of Afghanistan, in a huge firefight.
Right. While they were out in Afghanistan fighting for their life, you were eating potato chips on the couch.
Exactly.
Being a personal trainer.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, maybe not potato chips, but I'm on the couch.
Right.
Yeah, I'm for sure on the couch, And, so I get there, and again, I'm like, I gotta show that I can do the right things. And for me, being 25, being a little bit older, owning my own business, I was a little bit more put together than the average PFC coming in. But this was, again, another culture shock for me, was because I was always on time. I always had the right equipment. I didn't drink. I didn't party. I worked out twice a day on my own, like just so I could have a good PT score.
You were a leadership's dream boy.
The dream, but I didn't have the dream attitude.
Right.
I didn't have the dream attitude because I didn't understand how to earn it.
Yeah.
I didn't understand what it took to sacrifice.
Did you play sports or anything in like school or stuff?
Yeah. I wrestled.
Yeah.
And then I played football, and I loved football. So you had the drive to do stuff. You just, in that time in your frame of mind, or that space in your life, the infantry wasn't your thing. Like you didn't have the drive at that. Well, I guess before that, because when you got to the unit, that started to shift. It sounds like, to where you were more like, all right, this is what we're doing. We're going all in. Yeah. I mean, I think naturally we start out self-serving. Mm-hmm. And when I got there, it was more about the team. you know, even in a football team, you know, you're gonna have that camaraderie. You're gonna have that strong side, left side from, you know, remember the Titans. You're gonna
100%.
have that, but it ends.
Yeah.
You know, and so for me, like, you know, before the Army, my dad died when I was 21.
Oh, wow.
So like right before, you know, 4 years before I joined the Army, I'm looking at paperwork to sign custodial rights of 4 of my brothers.
Yeah.
21 years old. I work in a church. I drive a brown and blue Cutlass Sierra.
Nice.
You know, I have big, you know, giant house speakers in the back. I'm not ready to raise kids. What are you talking about? You know,
You're still a kid yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think I was very self-serving. I was spinning out of control. And so when I got there, you know, and I learned the leadership tactics that Sergeant First Class Metcalf taught. That was the platoon sergeant that lost his life. And I had a platoon sergeant he's a sergeant major out there. And he looked at me in the face and he said, "I know who you are." And I was like, "Sergeant, I don't know what do you mean?"
Right.
And he's like, "No, I know who you are." And I'm like, I don't know what you mean, Sergeant. And he's like, "You're a quitter." And this is like me coming right into the unit, and I meet this guy, and he's my platoon sergeant. Very first day, from the get-go, he calls me out. And so from that moment on, I'm like, I got to earn this every single day. Yeah. And so I'm on time. I've got everything right. I'm exercising. I'm the dream, but I still don't have the attitude. Right. And so I'm doing all the platoon stuff. I'm working with them. I'm going out to the bars with them, carrying them back to the barracks at the end of the night. You know, I'm doing the forced socialization, so to speak. And, you know, end up...
Fake it till you make it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to be one of them. But the breaking point for me, in this guy, dude, I love him so much for this, but I didn't at the moment. Right. He's out in Colorado now with his family, and he just finished a 100-mile race. Dumb as rocks. Nolan, you are dumb as rocks. But what he did for me in that moment was life-changing. Yeah. He's having me mop concrete floor. There's grease stains on the concrete floor. Right. Because we've got, you know, the CLP, we're using the lubricant to clean the machine guns, and we've got this paja area that's concrete. And so there's an oil stain on the concrete. And I'm like, dude, it's not going to come up. And he's like, I didn't ask you if it was going to come up. I told you to mop it up. Right. And I'm like, I don't give a shit. It's not coming up. And that's been me since I was little, you know, and grandma would have smacked me. Yeah, and I was like, okay, I'll clean it up, grandma. But this guy, like, I didn't know him from anything else. Right. Like, and he was a specialist and I was a private. And I'm like, when you get some stripes, then I'll listen to you. And he's like, what the fuck did you just say? Right. And I immediately got grabbed by the old guy in the platoon, the old specialist, and he grabbed me, he took me out. And he's always been a level-headed guy. His name was Smitty. He drank a little too much. Yeah. A little bit too much Sailor Jerry on the weekends. Great guy, but just struggled a lot. And he told me, he goes, dude, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm not going to mop that up. It's not. He's like, I don't care about that. What are you doing? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, you were on the couch 20 weeks ago while we're burying our platoon sergeant. Right. And you can't handle mopping an oil stain on the concrete?
For no reason.
What are you doing? Right. What are you going to do? Because we're going to leave and you're going to be the NCO. You're going to be the senior specialist. Right. You're going to be the one that has to prepare these young men to go in there and do whatever it takes, no matter what's going on, and have no emotional reaction and do what your job is. Yep. And when he said that to me, it snapped. I was like, fuck, I fucked up. Yeah. I'm going to get my boys killed because I'm an entitled prick. Right. And from that moment on, everything changed. Yeah. Everything changed from that moment on, because I went from serving myself to serving others.
100%.
That moment changed everything.
Which, going back to, you know, you had mentioned youth pastor and all that kind of stuff in Christ, that's the epitome of it. Mm-hmm. It's not self-serving, it's serving others.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, I think because, you know, I reached out to you because I'd heard of your business, you know, and
most people have at this point.
Well, when we were talking about the little contest that they were running, the popularity contest here in St. Louis, your name was on there, my name was on there, and I looked at all the rest of them and I'm like, I can't get along with anybody else. I gotta make contact with this guy because I'm like, in the dog training community, in every community, it's ego. 100%. Ego is the problem, you know, and
for many people,
for a lot of people. I mean, medical industry, business, all of it.
Everybody thinks they're competition for everybody else.
There's so many people out here, and in the dog training community, there's so many dogs out here,
especially in St. Louis.
Right. And I mean, and I've, you know, I took a different approach by meeting people, introducing myself, like, hey, if we can help each other, let's help each other. 100%. We should, because I think that's a growth mindset. You know, in that moment when I'm looking at that grease stain in the concrete, that's what I think about. And I think about, like, you know, Sergeant First Class Metcalf, who had kids, had a wife, and he's gone. And he's gone because he put his life for these boys that he, you know, just served time with, barely knew. They're not all from the same place. And so I think about that all the time. All the time when I make business decisions, when I make dog decisions, when I make life decisions, I think about that all the time. You know, and so fast forward, I end up getting promoted to sergeant really quickly because I'm so put together well. And then I fixed my ego. I fixed my mindset, and it was, what do you need me to do? You know, hey, we need somebody to go do EMT. You got it. I'll do it. We need somebody to be
the best piece of advice that I got before I even went in was check your ego at the door and volunteer for everything. And I fast tracked through the door.
Well, in to checking your ego at the door, I think that kind of comes back to dogs as well, because, like, if you think about some dogs, you just grab the leash and they're like, no, you got it. They can feel it. They can sense it. But some dogs are like, are you sure?
They're going to check you.
Which is me. Which is why I work with reactive dogs, which is why I work with fearful dogs, because that's who I am. That's who I was. And so being tough and being in that moment and going, dude, shut the fuck up. You're in the wrong place. That's exactly what I do when I look at these dogs. I'm like, stop. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to help you. And a lot of times that's a physical correction.
I mean, so I did an eval for a dog. He came in yesterday, but I did an eval for him last week. He looks like a lab Rottie mix, some kind of, you know, black dog, right? And the owner brought him in and had a muzzle on him. And as soon as he walked in, like, hair sticking up, he's checking everybody and, like, looking at him. And I was dealing with a client on the training floor. And I hear him, like, lighting up at everybody. And I'm like, all right, here we go. So I walk over after I get done with the client on the training floor, and I introduced myself, and I was like, so this is Rumor, which is the name of the dog. And he's like, yeah. And he's like, you know, just, he'll come after you if you get too close. I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to get in your space. I was like, you got a muzzle on him. Worst thing that's going to happen, he's going to muzzle punch me. Or it's going to come off and I'll get bit, but we'll figure that out as it comes. And he goes, are you sure? And I go, yeah, here I come. I just started walking over to him. And I mean, I'm closer than you and I are right now. And this dog is just over and over and over and over and over. And I'm just standing there taking it. And my staff see me do this 100 times. And there's a client still on the training floor, and they're looking over because this dog is just going ham on me. There's a client, like, in our eval room that has, like, mirrored windows so you can't see it, and they're like, is he gonna be okay? So this went on for like 2 minutes. Like, this dog was committed to push me over. And finally he stopped and just looked at me, and I was like, okay, give me your leash. So I took his leash, I went and sat on the floor, and the dog came over to me and just sat. Didn't touch him, didn't engage with him. And I started talking to the owner, and he goes, you're not right. And I go, well, your dog needed that. And he goes, what do you mean? Like, that looked, I was like, no, it hurt. It sucked. But he can't win. That behavior is unacceptable. And if he would have got a reaction out of me, if he would have hurt me to the point where I would have done anything, he now has my card. And it's going to be that much more difficult to make any progress. And I was like, here's the thing that you're going to have to learn really, really quickly is you cannot avoid the hard things. Right? And you get clients all the time. They're like, oh, well, my dog does this, so we don't go there. I'm like, now you've just created a way for your dog to get out of doing that.
You need to go there.
You need to go there. Now, don't just, like, if your dog's dog reactive, like, don't just bombard through Petco, right? You got to build it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got to build confidence in the dog. and your communication. Like if you don't have, so for me, like there's foundation, right? Obedience is being able to do a command in a neutral, stable environment. Yeah. That's obedience. Control is using obedience in public and distractions, right? And then from there, it goes into, you know, desensitization, neutralization, you know, environmental stuff, everything from there.
Right.
But everything comes from obedience and control.
Yeah.
And then obviously your relationship with the dog. Because if you don't have a relationship with the dog, you're not going anywhere.
Right.
Because the dog's going to be like, well, one, I don't trust you. So, you know, fuck you.
Right.
You know, or if you have a great relationship, but no obedience and control, now the dog's going to walk all over you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then, so I thought I lost the sale. Like I thought this dude thought I was nuts because I just got pummeled by his dog for so long. And sure enough, a couple of days later, he calls me up and was like, hey, you know, I was really impressed. Like I've talked to multiple other trainers that wouldn't even come close to my dog.
Yeah.
And he's like, when can we start? And I was like, I can start today.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I can't do it today, but how about next week on Wednesday? And I'm like, let's go, man.
Right.
Like, I'll be here waiting for you. So I will be the one that takes him in.
Right.
And it was crazy. So the dog came in, completely different dog. He walked in, his hackles weren't up. He wasn't slumped.
Right.
He wasn't looking for a fight. He saw me and was like, oh, it's you. And he goes, what just happened? And I was like, your dog remembered that there was no threat. He didn't get hurt. Even though he attacked the shit out of me, there was no repercussion other than that it didn't pay him anything.
Right.
So look at the demeanor in your dog now.
Right.
So then fast forward to today. So that dog got here yesterday. He actually got my lip. When I went to put the slip lead on, he popped up and he's never had I don't know the last time he's had his nails trimmed. He's got freaking like 2-inch talons.
Yeah.
And it got inside my lip and ripped the inside of my lip. So fast forward to today, I bring him out and take him for a potty break. He was a little reactive in the kennel. Not surprising, right? There's a barrier there. There's a bunch of different stuff. There's other dogs. And slip him. We go out to walk. He's cool. He's like, okay, I know you. I've interacted with you a couple times now. If I go after you, nothing's going to happen. So then I bring him back in the training floor, or not the training floor, but the little lobby area in our front area where the couches are and whatnot. And I sit down and I call my manager over, go sit down. Then my other trainer comes over and she sits on the floor. And they're like, because I got him on a 15-foot lead.
Right.
And they're like, he starts coming over. I go, don't react. Just act like he's not there.
Yeah.
So they did. This dog turned to goo. He just was rolling and lovey and trying to love on him. And then the trainer that was on the floor, he ran over to her and was like flipping in her lap and like lifting her. And they're like, this isn't the same dog. And I was like, this is what happens when aggression doesn't pay.
Right.
They have to do a different behavior. Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, avoidance will make the issue bigger.
Oh, 100%.
So how many different times this guy has avoided situations? The dogs react and he's gone the other way, and it's just built it up. Right. You know, so
now you have a bullying pot.
Right. Yeah.
And that's even scarier is when you have a dog that has really good obedience. Right. And they use obedience to cap aggression. Yeah. And then now you literally have a boiling pot that's been capped on a stove. Yeah. And it's just a matter of time. You have a ticking time bomb.
Right. Well, and I mean, you gotta punish the action. Right. You either have to not pay it or you have to punish it. Right. And there's some dogs out there, like I've said this so many times, like if you've seen Ozark, when Ruth is like, you're gonna have to fucking kill me. Oh yeah. There's dogs like that walk in all the time. You know, because, you know, coming back to where I got into dog training, like I had old school roots. Yeah, you know, so it's a crank and yank. Right. Was what I was brought up on. You know, and there's a lot of dogs. Well, there's not a lot of dogs, but a lot of dogs will take that and go, well, no, I don't want any of that.
Or they'll roll over and just be like, don't kill me. Right.
You know, and then there's that 1% out there that's like, go ahead, kill me.
I'll match you step for step.
Right. Right.
And they are few and far between. You know, I've been doing this for 10 years. Outside of like military, law enforcement dogs and sport dogs, there's a very, very small percentage of those dogs. Yeah. I have run into a handful on the civilian side, of the pet dog side, and they'll go toe to toe with you. Yeah. If you're not willing to go the distance, they will take you over.
Yeah. Yeah. So, So I mean, obviously, I finished up active duty, got promoted and all that, and that's when I met my wife. I actually had Tinder. I was coming back from Europe. Yeah. Another good decision of my life was paying for Tinder,
right,
and putting it back in the States, and ended up swiping on my wife.
So did you spend most of your time in Italy then?
I mean, that was our home base. Okay. So I was all over Europe. I've been all over the Baltics. Yeah. I've been tons of places. When I got there, you know, the colonel at the time, he was doing his change of command coming in, and he said, let's give a last hurrah for the final combat deployment for the 173rd. And I'm going, dude, come on, man. Like, what am I supposed to do? Right. And I think all that learning was intentional. I needed that growth to be the human that I am, because
absolutely.
The amount of people that we interact with, I mean, if you go through some of my reviews, like, people have put on there that my training is counseling.
Yeah.
We're training the humans.
Oh, 100%.
All the time.
We're dog trainers, we're human coaches, and part-time psychologists.
Yeah.
Psychologists?
Yeah.
However you say it.
The couch and the fluorescent people. Yeah, that's us.
Yeah, the shrinks. There we go.
Right. Better word.
No, 100%. And I get people all the time, you start talking to them, and they start realizing that most of their dog's problems stem from them.
Yeah.
I had this lady, dude, and I know I jumped on your conversation again.
It's okay.
But she was having like severe reactivity with her dog to kids. Mm-hmm. And couldn't figure it out. Like, I would take the leash and the dog was fine. Like, he would love on kids. Like, he was great. But as soon as mom had this leash, like, dog wanted to murder kids. Well, come to find out, like, later on, like, there was something in her past with, I think, her children that she was jaded and had problems with. Maybe a death of a child. I don't remember the whole story. This was years and years and years ago. But once she came to terms to it and forgave herself, dude, that stopped.
Yeah.
Like, almost immediately.
Yeah.
People do not realize the internal stuff that they deal with. Your dog knows. They may not know like what it is word for word, or, you know,
they can feel it.
They know what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, I have another client just recently. They're like, my dog hates my roommate. And I was like, well, do you like your roommate? And he goes, no. And I go, well, your dog is mirroring you.
Right.
So either get rid of the roommate.
Well, I mean, like, think about it from our perspective. You know, like, it's when I walk into the training floor and the dog's going bananas, I don't shudder.
No.
There's nothing there.
No.
I walk in, give me the leash. And the dog, like, there's a video on YouTube I've got where I'm wrestling with a Pyrenees that's as tall as me. Yeah. And I'm talking to him. I'm like, hey, dude, chill out. Stop. Knock it off. And I'm trying to grab his collar. I'm trying to control him a little bit more because he's going after my face, my leash, no muzzle. A good buddy of mine calls me the cowboy because that's how I do things. Sometimes it's not safe. Don't do that. But I'm talking to him the whole time. I'm like, stop, chill out. Okay, I'm going to drop you on your head, drop him on his head. And then he chills out.
Right.
You know, but there's if they're emotional, don't get emotional yourself. No. It's not going to help your situation.
It's like two batteries short-circuiting each
what's
other.
the dumb thing that they used to tell us? Put fire or fight fire with fire. Yeah. You got two fires, man. Don't do that. Right. That's dumb.
So there's a great analogy that someone told me about dog training, and it was a dog is a battery, right? So like your over-the-top dogs, they're overfilled,
right?
And if you come charged, you're just gonna get higher, right? So when you come to an overcharged dog, you have to be empty and neutral, and absorb whatever chaos is going on and dump it, right? You have to be the grounding rod to help that dog level out. Now the opposite happens too. If you have a dog that's dead, that has no energy, you have to come charged to feed that dog to get him to come out of his shell. And you know, when he told me that, I was like, that makes so much sense.
I think there's a pocket of my clients that love that they're like, oh, I want to see it.
Yeah.
Let's see, Brandon. Come on. Yeah. Come on, let's see those emotions. Come on, let's see you pep that dog up, because they always see such a flat response. Because in our world today, again, people watch too many Disney films. They get too emotional, too worked up, and all of this with this love first. And the problem with that is, like, dogs operate off of instincts.
Right. They're survival-based animals.
First and foremost, instincts. You know, I'm a hunter, and I don't go out in the woods and see, you know, the deer like congregating and talking about the near misses that they've, they're looking for food, they're looking for water, they're looking for shelter, they're looking for a way to get out, to survive. Yeah. And so like if we approach dogs from that love first approach, you can't even measure it. Right. You can't even measure the emotion. You can't measure the feelings. You can't measure any of that. So your compass is skewed from the start, which screws everything up. And then the real tricky part is if you start with that, and if you have the right type of dog, they're going to take that as word and become entitled.
Right. That becomes the default.
Oh yeah. I've often said it's like, if you don't give a dog direction, they will either become entitled because you're telling them everything they do is right, or they'll become fearful. And that's, when I sit down to talk to people, they'll be like, because my definition of obedience is a little different than obviously PetSmart, Petco, and the standard today obedience. It's do what I ask, when I ask it, no matter what, and hold it till I release you. And that is, there's no exceptions there.
So that's the control for me, right? So obedience is just knowing it, right? So that knowing the obedience for me is like, the command, you can do the command, you have some duration, but I'm not expecting a lot.
Right.
The control is where we get to that, because I want to have fun with the obedience.
Yeah.
The obedience should be fun. The learning portion of it, right? The control, that's game time.
Right.
Because that's where we start getting the real world.
Like the precision.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, and for me, like when I sit down to talk to people, that's what I always tell them.
Yeah.
They'll tell me my dog's got this. My dog wants to kill the neighbor. Okay, so we need to apply the same metrics that we would use in our obedience task to create the same metric in that situation. Yep. Correct what you don't like, reward what you like. Yeah. And that's it.
And that's the basis of a behavior modification.
Right.
The bad behaviors don't get paid. The good behaviors get paid. Like that, it can't get any more simple than that.
Exactly.
But people charge hundreds and thousands of dollars for quote unquote behavior modification when literally it's basic dog training.
Right.
But because it sounds cool, we're going to charge more.
Well, yeah. And that's something like if we go to like how I got started into dog training, I met my wife, like I said, in 2016 or 2015, she's going to kill me. But
we'll edit that part out.
Yeah. 15. So, when we met, she was like, she saw how good I was with dogs. Yeah. And not knowing, like, she didn't meet my grandma. She didn't know the family lineage of this. And my mom doesn't like dogs, like, oh, really? And it's probably a product of her childhood with, throwing dummies and decoys and stuff like that. But, for me, it's always been dogs. Yeah. And so like, I've got negative counselings from when I was in Poland, petting a dog that was on sentry. I walked into the fence and they're like, dude, are you? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do this. And I walked in and there's this shepherd out in Poland, huge shepherd. And he's like, he's not afraid of him. Okay. And I'm petting him. and I got a negative counseling for it. So like, I've always been good with it because I can read it, because I can walk in. And so she said, you should start working with dogs. And I'm like, babe, I just got out of the Army. I'm not working at PetSmart. I'm not working at Petco. So I ignored her. I did what every good husband does and ignored my wife for about 6 or 7 years. Right. And so fast forward and we end up back in St. Louis, and I end up apprenticing at a facility down in Jefferson County, and get there. 4 dog trainers there, all been to the same school here in St. Louis. Yeah. If you don't go to this school, you don't know how to train dogs. I was the only male. So a lot of chips, a lot of like clean up the pee, work with the biters, do this. And I'm like, okay, cool. I don't care. I've already earned it. Right. I've already mopped that concrete. Whatever I got to do. Right. Whatever I got to do. And so
you're on a mission at this point.
Yeah. So I get told, you didn't go to this school, so you can't train dogs. You can't read dogs. You shouldn't own a Malinois. You shouldn't even be working in dogs.
Knowing nothing about your 30 years of, well, I guess maybe not 30, but your previous experience growing up with dogs, your grandparents, like, they don't know.
Well, it's because I didn't have the formal application of it. Right. I didn't have the formal
certificate saying you're a dog
the
trainer,
paperwork that says, hey, you can do this.
90% of them are a joke anyway.
But I have the leash skills.
Right.
I have the ability. The funny thing about me not being able to read dogs is that's all I do.
Yeah.
That's all I do. That's all I know how to do.
Right.
And so, you know, because I would get down on the floor with reactive dogs, biters.
All the time.
And I don't have any scars on my face. I have scars on my hands. But I don't have scars on my face because I know how to read the situation.
Right.
And at the end of the day, even with these reactive dogs, they don't want to hurt me.
They don't.
They're afraid.
100%.
And so it's stupid for me to be like malice and angry and aggressive towards these dogs that just don't know how to live.
Or try to meet them with fire
right.
most of the time.
Right. So I would get that. And ironically enough, within 4 months, I'm not an apprentice anymore. I'm the head trainer. Yeah. Well, I might as well be the head trainer because I'm doing all the work.
Right.
I did work with a trainer. One of the trainers there, she was really good. She was very helpful. You could just tell she was busy with life. And so like she would give me help from time to time, show me stuff from time to time, like, hey, do it like this versus doing it like that. Having like an outside observer seeing
so you're not
what I was doing.
Vision, she's seeing the overall
which was
bird eye.
so helpful, so helpful. But that other trainer that said what they said, they were fired.
Yeah.
I was running the shop there. I was doing all of this. I was just training dogs, tons and tons of dogs, which is really what school is training tons of dogs.
That's what it should be.
Well, yes.
Now it's not.
Yeah, true.
Like there's 3 dog training schools in the St. Louis greater area. 2 of them, you bring 2 puppies through, and you don't touch a client dog.
Yeah.
How do you get experience?
Which isn't right because like, I mean, my Mal, she comes from perfect genetics. She comes from Schutzen lines. She comes from a work line. So she's like, hey, you want to work? I want to work. Let's go.
Right.
But what do you do with that puppy that's got 42 different breeds in it? You don't know which one's running the brain, and you don't know how long it's spent
in
feral.
the moment because it's got freaking 15 different personalities.
Right. You know, and so working all those dogs, and by the end of the year there, I'm training and doing every intro. I'm doing every training, and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm barely making $15 an hour. 20, probably 17 to 25 dogs are coming in every day, and I'm working with all of them. I'm doing all the intros. I'm like, my wife's like, it's time, and I'm like, okay.
Well, so $15 an hour. So people that don't understand the dog industry, the St. Louis average for a dog trainer is $13.50.
Right.
At least it was last year. I haven't looked this year.
Right.
It may have gone up because of inflation. Nationwide is $18 an hour.
Yeah.
Right. So dog training is not a very big money making business as a facility dog trainer.
Right.
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 The problem is that it takes special person to go out and do it on your own.
Yeah.
To run a business. You know, so most people get into dog training because it's a passion, not because it's a job.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, if we were wanting to get rich, we were in the wrong spot. Spot.
Well, maybe. It's different when you're a business owner. Like, you know, we talked earlier about, you know, replicating you, hiring somebody to take your place so you can actually operate the business and not, you know, work the business and things like that, which is kind of where I'm at. My position currently is, yes, I still actively train dogs, but my role now is more managing and, you know, teaching the trainers. Yeah. My general manager manages the business, like the training side of things, all that kind of stuff, the shop. And then I'm doing the sales. So my next position is replacing myself with a, you know, competent salesperson, which is way harder than it should be. Yeah.
So we end up leaving. I end up doing it out of my 4Runner and bring them out. It's Mal and 4Runner and me. Yeah. And so we're going door to door. I mean, it might as well be. It might as well be. But we're charging like next to nothing, and I'm just getting dogs. I'm just because my mentality, and my wife was like, "Hey, we need to raise prices." I'm like, "Not yet." And she's like, "No, we need to raise prices." I'm like, "Not yet. I need to build the reputation that I know what I'm doing. I know how to do this. I know how to help people before I raise my prices astronomically." Because my prices, I know they're online. You can go to my website.
See, I'm that way too. Like, I don't understand these places that, like,
why you gotta hide it?
Be transparent.
Right.
Because you're going to tell me the price one way or the other.
Right.
Why would you want tire kickers that
I don't.
When you spend 15, 20 minutes on the phone with them and then it finally gets down to the end of the sales pitch where it's like, okay, well, what are the prices?
Right.
Oh, no, it's too much.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me.
I can't care more about the welfare of your dog than you. So if price is a problem, go to PetSmart.
Right.
Go to Petco
or big box. Or
yeah.
whatever.
I mean, it is what it is, but all that stuff is up there. So like we're building this and I have a moment of panic. Back to the Army days, you know, when I quit, when I was overwhelmed, I'm sitting there on the porch and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I owned a personal training business, right. And I topped out in that business. I was number 4 in the company here in St. Louis for sending training, for doing a good job, like doing well. I was high up there, right. But I capped out. I capped out because when I was a kid, I would go to practice and I would be an all-star because I knew my buddies weren't going to kill me. That expectation of performance anxiety was huge in my life, and it hit me when I was in the Army too. Yeah. My wife sat me down, and my wife is one of the most important people. She is the most important person in my life.
We need to get our families together because it sounds like they would.
She sat me down and she said, "Shut the fuck up." And this is what I needed to hear. Right. You know, for you and I, this is the thing that we need to hear because we don't need to hear, "Oh, it's okay, babe. You're going to do all right." I need somebody to be real with me. Right. And she said, "Shut the fuck up. You are supposed to do this. You are supposed to do this. Right. Do this.
This is your calling." And
from that moment on, dude, it's been, you know, and now we've obviously got the facility.
Yeah. Which, congratulations, by the way. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Opening a facility is daunting.
Yeah. Yeah, doing the construction while still traveling, while still running dogs, and have 2 kids under 2.
While keeping up on your bills.
Yeah, yeah. Trying to do construction in a budget.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and ironically, you know, and I've talked about this on my social media so much because, you know, we flirted with the modern form of dog training a little bit, the emotional projection, all of that stuff. I get tons of negative comments because I'm aggressively sarcastic. Yeah. You know, that's.
I love your freaking reels, dude. Like all the videos that you do, mock overs and whatever. Like I watch them on a daily basis because you put out some funny content, and I'm really bad about content. Like a lot of the content I put out it's pretty basic. I used to do a lot better. Yeah. Like I did a lot of educational stuff when I was a one-off, but I had more time as a one-off to do that stuff. So I'm like trying to pawn it off of my trainers now that they need to start. I sent them my old dog training profile. I'm like, hey, you watch these videos and start putting this out, and I'll give you a raise. But yeah, no, dude, opening a facility is definitely daunting because you don't realize what you need until you start, and then you really don't even realize what you need until like you're a few weeks into it. Mm-hmm. And then once it's done, it's never done. Right. Like I've been in that building for 2 years now, and it's massive. It's 12,000 square feet. Yeah. There's still things that we started when we first opened that we still haven't done because there's just other priorities to do, you know? And that's my 3rd facility I've opened, and it was a little bit easier, but it was definitely by far the largest one I've opened because my first one was about 900 square feet. Yeah. The second one was about 3, and then now we have the 12,000. Yeah. And the bigger you get, the worse it is. So.
Well, I mean, that's the point, though. Yeah. That's the point, is to keep growing.
Well, and it's all learning. Like I'm a constant student. Like I love to learn. Yeah. And
for sure,
one of the big things I feel like that correlates to dog training more than anything else is struggle. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the current generation is so afraid to struggle that they're stuck. Mm-hmm. I'm okay with struggle. I've struggled my entire life.
So are the dogs.
Correct. It is good to struggle. You need struggle in your life. Your dog needs, because otherwise how do you gain confidence? Right. So bumping my business to going bigger and bigger and bigger, it's a fucking struggle. Yeah. And it is stressful. Yeah. But things I would have thought 2 years would have killed me in business, I look at now and I laugh. Yeah. Because it's something I deal with on a daily basis. And it's like, you know, then I was like, the world's ending. I'm going to lose everything. Yeah. And now it's like, oh, I refunded a dog training package because I didn't mesh with the client and I didn't want to train their dog anymore.
Yeah. I did that last week.
Yeah. 2 years ago, I would have lost my shit. Yeah. Right? Because I was so invested in every single dog. Like now it's to the point where you don't want to work with me. I'm okay with that. Yeah. I am not everybody's cup of tea.
Yeah.
And I am okay with that.
For sure.
You know? And I feel like and it's hard for dog trainers that are just starting off because they feel like they have to train every single dog to make ends meet.
Right.
And that's a real thing. Like when you're just starting, like you need income.
Yeah.
Then you get the trainers that have been doing it for a while and they kind of get used to a comfortable living.
Yeah.
And they go through a slow spot, which happens. There's like 2 or 3 slow seasons in dog training. And they're like, well, I'm just going to take everybody. And then they risk bad reviews, taking on too much of a dog.
You're not qualified to take on everybody. You know,
100%.
You know, there's specialties, all of this, you know, and that was where I met a guy, Sean O'Shea, and owns the Good Dog Way.
Good Dog Way, that's what it was.
He is, I mean, one of the truest human beings that I've ever met.
I like I guess he shares them from TikTok. I don't have TikTok.
Twitter,
that's what it is. I don't have Twitter either.
Yeah, neither do
I like the way he explains things.
Yeah.
He's very articulate.
Yeah.
I've read one of his books.
Yeah.
He's very, very educated. Or at least he comes off that way with the way he talks.
I gotta get you guys to meet, because the thing about Sean, it's no different than us. Like, he works at it.
Yeah.
He's not. He's dyslexic.
Yeah,
like, you know, so
dyslexic, ADD, ADHD.
So like, you know, we're talking about struggle and we're talking about work, and, you know, and you were talking about the next generation is struggling with this. It's because we've made the world their world softer, not the world, their world. And when you avoid conflict, whether with kids or with dogs, you make it harder for them to deal with actual 100%. Conflict. And that's why dogs struggle so much. We're such a weird time that we want social interactions with dogs in every avenue of life. We want bars with dogs in it. We want cafes with dogs in it. We want daycares, which in St. Louis, they've only been around for 20 years.
Right.
We didn't have any prior to 2000. Right. We didn't have daycares. We didn't have dog parks. We didn't have any of that because it wasn't necessary. Right. But you want all of that, but you also don't want to come to terms with the one way that dogs communicate with each other to regulate behavior every time.
It's physical.
Physical corrections 100%. Are the way they regulate behavior.
Oh, but it's bad. That's abuse.
Right. But they're dogs. They're dogs.
Watch dogs play.
Right. You know, and it's
and even if the dog's not being aggressive, if you watch dogs play, when a dog does something the other dog doesn't like, they instantly in the moment give a correction. Yeah. And it's not, they don't just stop and stare at each other and go, hey dude, I didn't appreciate that. Can you not do that anymore?
Right.
It's
right.
And the other dog either is going to respect the correction or he's not.
Yeah.
And then now we have a dog fight.
Right.
If they're willing to go the distance.
Yeah. And I have a lot of clients that are like, get it. I'm spot on with you. I get it. And then, you know, you see the social media traffic. Like I was saying, I do the aggressive sarcasm. And to me, I just take all of it and I say, well, I mean, they're lost. You know, I don't care. I don't take anything personally. No. You can't use Google. You know, I had a lady, I call her the charcuterie board expert.
Dude, so I showed my wife, oh my God. I showed my wife the exchange on that thread. And she was like, I need to meet him because I love the way he talks, talking about you.
Yeah.
And the, like, all your backhanded, like, so, and her coming from the human intelligence side, like, my wife is highly intelligent.
Yeah.
Like, she can talk.
Yeah.
I'm a crane eater. I'm not that one. But she was dying, dude. She just.
Yeah. So you can't. And it's regurgitated stuff.
All of it,
you know. And ironically, I've got a client who went through Purely Positive because she's a scientist. Because she was bona fide scientist. She's talking about stuff, and I'm going, oh gosh, please calm it down.
Right.
And she read the studies to me. Some of these studies that they regurgitate.
But none of them are studies. They're all peer reviews.
But the interesting thing, if you go down to the bottom, she taught me this the other day.
I saw your post about
a reviewer.
Yeah.
A reviewer says, is this something that they can recreate? And both of them say no.
Yeah.
On each one of them.
Yeah.
So that means that all of this data that they're standing on can't be replicated.
Right. Well, so the other thing too, like, have you heard of Black Kraken Canine? I think it is. So he brought on some like biologist, scientist lady. This was like sometime last year. Who what she does for a living is studies. Like, that's what she does.
Right.
And she basically explained, like, the studies that all these purely positive people talk about, they're not real studies.
Yeah.
They can't get funding for them.
Right.
One, because, and then two, like, they don't have the ability to keep it neutral enough that you would actually get results.
Right.
So everything that they're saying are quote unquote studies or reviews based off of books. And I don't even think they're dogs they're basing it off of. I think it's just animal psychology.
Yeah.
So I'm part of this like purely positive, like force free Facebook community, which has like an unseen amount of people in it for some reason. And someone regurgitated that and it was like, oh, there's all these studies done and I can't believe people are still using training equipment.
Yeah.
And it's like all these organizations, and it's a list this long of like veterinarians and all these initials.
Yeah.
They all agree that aversive dog training is bad.
Right.
And I'm like, so I just type in there, I'm like, and it still hasn't been approved yet by the admins.
Yeah.
But I'm like, can somebody show me a link to some of these studies? Because I really, truly would like to read the context of the study for my educational purposes. And I'm not saying, and I never once said they weren't done. It wasn't confrontational. I just want to see what you're seeing.
Right.
Because if I'm doing something wrong, I want to know.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Because I've been doing this now for a decade. I've trained I've trained multiple dogs purely positive. And it can get you places. You can teach just about anything purely positive if you have a motivated dog.
Yeah.
But you can't stop or change behaviors with it.
Right. Right.
And that's 90% of dog training is changing and stopping behaviors.
Right.
Unless you're dealing with puppies.
Yeah.
Like, I got this guy here in St. Louis that absolutely hates me. And I'll call him out. His name's Jonathan.
Yeah.
And he takes my videos and they'll go and like, oh, this dude's not reading body language. Like, no, MFer. Like, I am reading body language. I'm ignoring the body language because it's an aggressive dog. And if I show that I'm going to give in, he's going to take advantage.
What's that? The growl is a warning? Right. What is the growl a warning for?
Bite.
Right. But
there's cues before the growl even comes for most dogs.
Certainly. Well, and I have a problem with rescues that say that because at the end of the day, a dog's poor behavior puts their life in jeopardy.
100%.
So why do we allow poor behavior?
Right.
Why do we allow growling? Why do we allow snarling? Why do we allow leash biting or biting us?
If you correct the growling, you now have a dog that's just going to lash out, supposedly.
Right, for sure.
I've never seen that happen. Because the dog's going to growl regardless, even if you correct for it. But you're being proactive in your approach versus reactive.
Right.
Now, I don't suggest, like, if you just got a dog, you correct him right away for growling.
Right.
You need to learn the dog and learn the behavior, and then you need to learn his body language and his triggers.
Earn that.
Right.
Earn it. Build the relationship. And that's, I mean, it's people living on the internet, not living in real life. You know, and the one thing that I would...
This right here, this is going to be the death of the of our culture.
Of kids, of dogs, of all of it. Because, you know, in the one thing that I always present to these people is, what were people doing before these studies?
Right.
What were people doing before Skinner? Because my grandparents were training dogs before Skinner. Yeah. My grandfather didn't use food ever in a training lesson. Ever. Why? Because you couldn't afford to feed them.
Right.
So you didn't use food to train a dog. You taught a dog. I know how to train a dog without food for everything. Yeah. And you should know that, because how did we do it before? Because I think, and this is one of the things that I say all the time with my clients, our living generation does a really good job of bitching from comfort.
Oh, 100%.
Bitching about the past from our comfortable lives today.
It's first world problems.
Why are we not recognizing that the discipline that our parents gave us got us to where we are today?
Because they're not disciplining kids anymore. It's against the law.
Yes, that is true. But what I mean is, like, our age people. Right. Our age people who were disciplined. We do this. You'll see this. I don't go to brunch, but brunch people are sitting around complaining about the way that their parents disciplined them, not recognizing the fact that you just paid for $80 of orange juice with some wine, or I don't even know what it is, mimosa. Yeah,
it's a mimosa. I think it's vodka and orange juice.
Okay, so you
maybe sparkling orange juice. I don't know.
Perfect. So
I'm not that person.
You're spending $80 at a bougie breakfast, right, and you're not recognizing that you're able to do that because of the discipline that you were provided as a child.
100%.
Because if we look at the past and we compare it to our current soft present, absolutely everything's going to look awful. But the reality is not everything in the past was bad and not everything in the past was good, but there are things that got us to where we are. Yeah. And when it comes to dogs haven't evolved.
No, not really.
It's this progression.
Well, they have, but we've made them worse in the evolution.
Right, yeah. But they haven't progressed to the point of failure like we as humans have today.
If you let dogs, if you let every dog go wild right now, some would die. Mm-hmm. Like your chihuahuas and your worthless, foo-foo dogs that need you.
Right.
But eventually, there would be a pack, or there would be multiple packs, and the dogs would survive. Yeah. The strongest would survive. And then the crazy thing is, so we have plethora of colors and shapes and all that kind of stuff, right? Within probably 20 to 50 generations, they would all look exactly the same.
Yeah.
There'd be some mute color,
right,
like a coyote, within a few generations, and they'd be a wild dog.
Yeah.
They would regress super quick, but we don't allow it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the only add that I would put to that is like domestic dogs need us.
Yeah.
They need us more than we need them. Like if you think, I mean, if
I don't know. I feel like I need my dog pretty bad.
Yes.
That's a me problem, not a dog problem.
Yes, that's not the dog problem. That's an us problem. But if you think about it, like the rescues around here, they don't collect dogs out in the wilds of Wentzville. Like they're not catching them out at the forest park, or the area where there's wildlife. Right. They're catching them in people's homes, like, abandoned buildings where humans used to be, because dogs need direction, and direction isn't just love. It's discipline. Right. One of the most, great categories of a good relationship is boundaries.
100%.
And if you don't have that direction, you're going to always have problems.
100%.
Always have problems.
Whether you're human, dog, anything, you have to have established boundaries.
Yeah.
I was really bad at that as a business owner. Like I would answer text messages at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. Like I didn't care. I was like, they're on the hook. I got their dog. I have to communicate with them, right? And that was you can ask my wife about it, man. Like that was a very, very difficult boundary for me to set. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't because I felt obligated to do it. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed being in touch with those people and telling them about their dog and how their dog's progressing and stuff like that. But that was a really difficult boundary for me. And ever since then, like I actually sleep now a little bit.
Yeah.
So, so that's made a huge difference for me.
Yeah.
But, so how long have you officially been a dog trainer?
Getting paid to train dogs, probably this is going to be year 3 or 4.
Okay. Yeah. And how long have you been a dog training business owner?
3 or 4.
3 years. Okay. Yeah. Well, so you got paid at the apprenticeship.
As the apprenticeship. Yeah. Yeah. That was 2021. So 3 years. Yeah.
So you were only there for a very short time.
About 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's been your biggest struggle becoming your own boss?
Managing time, and having a life outside of the business.
Oh, you have one?
I don't.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to find it.
Yeah.
Just being able to grow, continuing to grow. I think, and this was something my wife has struggled with, because I'm more of the hippie one in the relationship than she is. I've gone on some journeys, some self-discovery. I've released some trauma, so to speak, to where, like when my kids were born, my oldest son was born. I started having allergic reaction to meat and dairy. So like I would go into homes and people would cook burgers before, and I'd get sick in their house. I'd be like, we got to train outside. And it was
Did you get bit by the tick?
No, they thought it was. They were treating me for it, and this went on for a year. And it was.
Oh wow!
And I'm like, I don't do fast food. I don't do any of that. Like I'm a healthy guy. And then when our second son was born, or we found out we were pregnant with him, it got worse, and to the point of where all I could eat was salmon, rice, cashews, and like zucchini.
I would have starved to death.
I lost a ton of weight. It's a great weight loss plan. But I ended up getting suggested, check out this Instagram account called Human Garage, which is a fascia release program. And it seems very hippie, and people are going to be like,
my wife was talking about that. So my wife, she's one of the ones, like, if she's on a rabbit, she'll go down the rabbit hole.
Oh yeah, I do that.
Yeah, she brought that stuff up to me before, and she's like, "This is amazing."
Yeah,
and she started doing it.
So I ended up watching a video, and the guy that runs it, Gary. He was talking to this lady, and he's like telling her, he's like, she's telling him all about her autoimmune issues, and he's like, shh, basically tells her to shut up in this FaceTime, and he's like, your throat chakra is locked up. And, the throat chakra is like speaking your truth. And I'm like thinking about it. I'm like, man, this is all, like, I've had real bad stiffness in my neck, like when this has been happening, and it all correlates to the birth of my children. And I end up calling my wife, and I'm like, I think I need to forgive my mom. So like my grandma is a huge part of my life, and I consider the interactions that I had with her as a very mothering experience for me, because I was a very loud child. I was a very out of control child. Yeah. My mom was 22 when she had me, and she had a rough childhood herself. Yeah. And so like my grandmother was very physical with me and no nonsense, and it worked for a child like me. And that's why you can't approach a dog from a singular lens. You have to have a wide lens, because if your dog needs a physical approach, that's what they need. Right. If they need a little more pep, then that's what they need. And my mom just couldn't do it because she's pouring from a broken vessel herself. Right, for sure. And so like I go to my mom's house, and I'm like sitting down talking to my mom, and I'm like, hey mom, I forgive you. I forgive you for using me as a custody tool. I forgive you for medicating me instead of talking to me. I forgive you for not understanding how to love me. And like, I just well up with tears. All the air sucks out of me. And like, she doesn't receive it because, again, she's pouring from a broken vessel, but it's not that point. The point is me letting it go. Yeah. And so this went on for almost 2 years, where I was allergic to meat, and then it got even worse when we found out about the second. And 3 days after I did this, I could eat anything.
Holy crap.
And I was having hives. I was having like all kinds of issues. Like it all went away 3 days after this.
Which goes back to the whole thing I was talking about earlier, how your dog will react to what you're feeling. Yeah. Like we don't realize how much our bodies control things. Right. It's crazy.
Dude, I mean, it's that. I don't believe there is such a thing as a dog whisperer. I think it's a sales tactic. I've said it many a times, because I think that every human is capable of leading a dog.
Absolutely.
They just have to get there. However they need to get there in their mind and their heart.
Now, I do believe some people have it more natural than others. Yeah, yeah. But I don't think like I'm really good with dogs, just like you're really good with dogs, right? Yeah. I don't walk into a room and I look at a dog and I can hear what he says.
Right, right. That's nonsense.
Right. But I've been doing this long enough, and I think because of one of the big things for me, like my wife tells me, everybody like, oh, Tommy's 75-80% dog. I'm like, okay. I mean, I probably got the traits of it, but I'm not a freaking dog. Right. But one of the reasons why I like working with broken dogs, aggressive dogs, is because I'm freaking broken. Yeah. Like I came from being broken. Like I was a survivor growing up. Like, dude, I've been through it. Yeah. And I feel like there's a connection there, and I feel like there's a rebirth every time I save a dog. Yeah. And that's me. Yeah. Every time. Yeah. So, dude, I know exactly what you're talking about.
I was down at this thing in Tennessee, doing this retreat, or it was just an event with the Human Garage people. And we were out on this farm, and it's called a regenerative farm or something. They make supplements and different things. It's all natural stuff. Yeah. And they had this dog out there. It's this Pyrenees. God, Pyrenees. They're so freaking popular for no reason. Like, I mean, there's so many trendy homesteaders nowadays that want Pyrenees, and they put them in their house. And I'm like, do you want this as a pet or a livestock guardian? Because there's two different ways to run this.
Right. And you can't do both.
Right. And so this Pyrenees has got an attitude, which most of them do when you don't train them.
After 3.
Right. And so he comes up to me, and the owner of the farm is like, hey, just keep an eye out for the Pyrenees. His name's Todd or something. I don't remember what his name is, but some human name. And he doesn't really like men, and he doesn't like men that wear hats. Well, I don't take off my hats for dogs. I don't really do it for anybody. Right. And so the dog comes up to me, and I'm just standing there, and I'm talking to the people. I'm like, hey, what's up, dog? And I just go back to talking, and he like leans on me. Yeah. And then I put my hand down, and I put my hand on his head, and he's just leaning. And like we ended up finishing the event and everything, and like the coordinator, her husband, was like, dude, you're a conduit. Like what you're talking about with the grounding rod.
Right.
That's exactly what he said. Because he's like, that dog just chilled out after you touched it. And I'm like,
well, so I feel like for dogs, that type of dog, like reactive, fearful, nervous, aggression, when they run into dudes like us, we've seen it. Like we've been there. Like we've been through aggression.
Yeah.
Like I've used aggression. You know, I've been deployed. Like multiple combat deployments. Right. Like I've been there. Like I have aggression issues.
Right.
I feel like when a dog comes to be with that, and they can feel your energy, your neutrality, your confidence, there's something there, right? And they just, dude, they turn to freaking butter.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, that's the most telling thing that you can see about a trainer is what is the energy of their dog.
Right.
You know, what is the energy that they're putting off? Because like we talked about, I've met a couple of big name trainers in the industry, and the energy that they put off isn't real.
No.
Because they're not real.
Right.
You know, and it's I was even told by one, like, hey, I want to be an influencer. And I'm like, what do you realize how many people you're impacting by doing these Sarah McLachlan specials when these dogs come into your facility, and not one time are you asking whether the dog can hold a sit, whether they throw chicken on the floor or there's no chicken on the floor. And he's like, well, it's not. And I'm like, but that's where it starts, man.
Right.
If the expectation is I can do whatever I want, then the dog's going to do whatever it wants.
Right.
But if the expectation is I need to get direction before I do the next set of instructions, then that's the way the dog's going to act.
We could do a whole podcast directly on social media presence, people, bullshit versus real.
Yeah.
Like I made a post the other day, and I got some freaking backlash from some of those influencers dudes. They're like, oh, that's not true. And I'm like, well, let's go. Come out to the facility.
Right.
Show me.
Use Google.
Right. Dude, it just,
it's there.
It's crazy to me. Like, and unfortunately, like our culture now is so invested in social media, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, whatever, that's news.
Yeah.
And it's real for a lot of people.
Right.
They don't realize how fake that stuff is.
Oh man.
They're just getting the highlight reel.
Dude, I was talking to my wife about this a couple of weeks ago. Like, I feel like the early 20s, you know, the early 20-year-olds right now, they make up a lot of things for online traction.
Oh, 100%.
Because they don't have any real interactions in life, and so they just make some of this stuff up to create a reaction. Right. And it's so fake, and it's so, you know, and at the end of the day, the only thing that's losing is the dog.
Oh, 100%.
The only thing that's losing. I mean, look, and I posted this the other day.
Country and
yeah, I mean, yes. But speaking specifically about what we do, you know, and with I posted about this a couple days ago because I get a lot of comments from people in Europe, and it's like, guys, are you so tone deaf?
Right.
Like last year they banned e-collars and they banned prong collars. In Sweden they banned the doors on kennels. And so in the UK right now, as a year later, they're banning XL bully breeds because they think that's going to solve the problem. You ban the guns, people are going to stab each other. You can look at the UK, it's happening all the time.
Right. Everywhere.
I mean,
China's that way.
Yeah.
UK's that way. Australia's that way.
People are going to be violent if they want to be violent.
Right.
And the only way to combat that is equal or more.
Right.
You know, and so like
a good guy with a gun stops a bad guy with a gun
every single time.
Right.
You know, and it just couldn't have been more poetic because I saw it, you know, and I'd had people ask me about it. My apprentice, so 3 years, and I have apprentices.
Nice.
I've had apprentices for the last...
Dude, I love teaching. Like, if there's one thing that I could do besides dog training would be teach.
Yeah.
I love teaching.
Well, that's what I originally, when I my very first stint in college, when I was doing the youth ministry, I was at WashU and I was going to be a teacher.
Yeah.
You know, my grandma wanted me to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
She's like, you're long-winded. You can make a lot of money. You can argue. But I wanted to be a teacher.
Yeah.
But then when I got into school and, you know, just some of the stuff that this blind ideology. It was starting in 2006 and 7 when, you know, when Obama came into office, and it was, you know, you're privileged if you're this skin tone, you're, you know, you're this, you're that. And I'm like, but that's not real, you know? And I even got in trouble when I was finishing my business degree, which was years later when I was in the reserves. I was finishing my business degree. I got in trouble and I had to talk to the dean because one of the teachers that I had in business leadership, she had made a post saying that leadership is born in somebody. You have to be born a leader. And I said, who the fuck are you?
Right.
You're telling all these 18 to 20-year-olds right now that are very impressionable that they'll never be a leader because they weren't born that way. Right. Do you understand how abusive that is? Yeah. And I did that on a live post. And I didn't realize it was because I didn't know what I was doing. And so I put her on blast to everybody. And so the dean was like, oh, we need to have a conversation about the ethics and the way that you, and I was like, I'm not wrong.
Right.
I'm not wrong. You can't tell 18 to 20-year-olds that they can't do something because they're not born a specific way.
Well, and that's, you know, aside from dog training, like the American culture, going back, we're soft, right? You know, weak men create hard times times create strong men create easy times, right? So if you look at our culture, the American culture, we're a throwaway culture, which is why we have rescues, why we have shelters.
Right.
If you look at Europe, they don't have that problem because they take the dog, they go through clubs, they have things for, and dogs are part of their culture through and through. You can just go to a restaurant and sit in a restaurant, and there's usually dogs.
Right.
We're all freaking fat. We're all over medicated because we're soft. We don't want to struggle.
Yeah.
You know, 100 years ago when we were farmers, it was different. There wasn't depression.
Yeah.
There wasn't fatness. There wasn't obese people.
Yeah.
There wasn't all these diseases that we have now.
Yeah.
We created all this.
Yeah.
And now we're handing it down to our dogs because we don't think our dogs need to struggle because we don't need to struggle.
Right.
I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah.
It's just an observation that I make.
Yeah.
And it's so annoying because then you get the people that are like, well, you know, it's a living animal and it just needs love and affection and treats. And I'm like, well, if that worked, then why do we have so many shelters and rescues and kill shelters and everything else in the United States? Because if love and affection and treats fix everything, then we shouldn't have any dogs. Oh, well, the breeders are overbreeding. No, I promise you, the breeders aren't overbreeding.
Yeah.
It's the backyard breeders that know that dogs make money and people that can't handle the dogs because they have all this baggage and everything else.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, and to add to that, like I would say, because I saw this post the other day, and it was this psychologist, and she was talking about she was reading something from Gabor Mate, I think his name is. He's been on Joe Rogan. He's a psychologist of some sort.
Not Jordan Peterson?
No, it was Gabor Mate.
Okay.
And so the thing that she was talking about was that the discipline with children is the problem.
Oh.
You know, and I went into a little bit more detail on that because I didn't think that was completely accurate, because I think discipline is the problem, but I think it's the problem on both ends, parents and the kids, because it's discipline from the parents to the kids, but it's also discipline on the parents' part to create that expectation that they have. Expectations is one of the most dangerous things that we can do in relationships, with our dogs, with our wives, with our kids, because your expectations is based on something that you think and perceive in your head, either based on the work that you've done or the work that you haven't done.
Right.
And so, like, that's the most dangerous thing. People are signing their kids up for sports in January, February, you know, like the summer, the spring, the fall, the winter, so that they have tired kids. That's not parenting. You give your kid an iPad so that you can sit and drink your $7 coffee drink, so you can doom scroll. You're not parenting.
Dude, I hate going to restaurants and seeing kids on, 4 or 5 year old kids. They're on their...
Yeah.
And it's like... Dude, my mom would have whopped me in the back of the head if I was a kid doing that.
We're shucking responsibility for comfort. There's a book called The Comfort Crisis, and I recommend it all the time. And it's a fantastic book, and it's talking about the slow descent that we're taking into comfort. And it's killing us because we're looking to get out of things, get out of the work.
Not struggle.
Right. And that I would say that when I work with people, I have to tell them this every time. I say, set your expectation the right way. Teach the dog. Don't expect the dog. Teach the dog. Yeah. The only reason you should expect the dog to do something is if you taught him it.
Right.
teach them.
And you can't correct something the dog doesn't know.
Exactly.
You have to teach first.
Dog doesn't know. Dog doesn't care. 2 reasons why dogs don't do what we ask.
It's not because they're stubborn.
Right. If they don't know, teach them more repetitions. If they don't care, raise the pressure.
Right.
But you can't raise the pressure unless they know.
Right.
And so that's where I feel like
and
a lot
you have to balance that pressure with positive.
Absolutely.
Because there has to be a reward.
Yes.
There has to be payment for doing
yes.
it. 100%.
And, you know, so I think that's a big problem with kids nowadays and with dogs is that we want the cart before the horse. Right. We want that good dog that our neighbor has, not knowing how much work our neighbor put into that dog. Right. You know, I used to see this when I would travel in home. People would be like, well, you know, Susie down the street, she's got a great dog. I want my dog to walk like Susie's dog. And when I'm like, okay, well, let's wait for Susie to go by. Susie's walking by with a 9-year-old black Labrador retriever.
That's settled.
That dog is about to cross the rainbow bridge. You're comparing your 6-month-old puppy to a 9-year-old dog.
That has thousands of hours of repetition with that owner.
It could have thousands of repetitions, or it could have just gave up because it's so close to death. Yeah. You know, the reality.
Not a lab.
Well, I mean, if they're feeding it Purina. Well, yeah. And some other really junk food.
Ray or, all the recalls.
Yeah. You know, and so when your expectations are based on non-reality, you're always going to be unfair. You're always going to be short. You're always going to be upset because your expectations is it should go this way, but you haven't put in the work that way. I make sure that I do this with my wife all the time, you know, because men and women are different.
100%.
We're so different. And, you know, the thing that I see this all the time, like men don't like to be in a combative relationship with their wives. No. And I don't like it. I know you don't like it. No. And so like I actively choose to be peaceful. Yeah. I actively choose to, hey babe, what's going on? What's going on? What can I help with? Yeah. You know, and it's not because I'm soft. It's because I care. My wife isn't my combatant. She's my partner. 100%. You know, and so I actively choose to change my expectations based on my reality. What do I want to create? What do I want my boys to be at the end of the race? I do that every time. My son has hit me more than any male has ever hit me in my life. And he's 2 years old. And he's probably going to hit me more. Right. But I have the expectation that I want this to be a good, solid young man by the time he becomes an adult. I want the whole life. I want that, but I have to choose my interactions in those situations in order to guide that.
Yeah. So I'm a girl dad.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I have 2, and I grew like all my sisters. I have all sisters that are younger than me. So I'm on kind of the flip side of that because I need to mirror the man that my daughter's. Yeah. That I want her to marry. Yeah. That's scary. Yeah. Right? And then we just found out that we're having a boy in December. So now my brain is flipped again because it's like, I've been doing this girl thing for 10 years. Yeah. Like, I don't know how to do the boy thing. Yeah. So I've been reaching out to my buddies that are like, you know, dude, you got a boy. What do I need to know? You know, and one of my really good friends, Justin, he's my, we deployed together, you know, all that kind of stuff. And like, he's in our trust. Like if we ever, my wife and I both die, like he's getting our daughter, like all that stuff. So I asked him, I was like, so, cause he's got multiple boys. I'm like, so what's the thing? He goes, never get in competition with them. Yeah. It's not about you. Right. And I was like, that makes total sense. Yeah. You know, and like, even like I grew up, my dad at the beginning of our relation, like, my parents got divorced when I was really young, and there was a lot of turmoil between that. And now him and I have a fantastic relation, have for years. Yeah. But my dad's very soft-spoken. Yeah. You know, he's not a quick person. Like, he's a musician, you know, plays old 80s rock, 60s rock, that kind of stuff. Rides a Harley, but he's not a biker. Right. You know, that's just not my dad. Yeah. Lives in Florida, and he's just like living the retired life. And I'm like, that's not me. Yeah. Like I have traits of my father for sure, but that's not the person that I am. Yeah. And yeah, so it's definitely been interesting, and I don't know, I'm terrified of what these next couple, like I've been terrified for years of where we're going culturally. And it's only going to get worse. Yeah.
I mean, I think, and I sent this to my wife the other day. I sent it to her. I said, you know, we're raising children in time of dragons. Yeah. But how awesome is it to raise dragon slayers? Right.
I saw that quote the other day. Yeah. And I was like, dude, I got goosebumps. I was like, yeah.
You know, because like my dad died when I was 21, and he had my youngest brother was born like literally 3 months before he died, you know, and so I think that we have a finite time on this earth, and our goal on this earth isn't to take, it's to give. Yeah. And so like, you know, like one of the interesting stories that I tell about my dad, you know, because when I was in junior high, I got kicked out because I was just so wild. I was put on Prozac. I was fighting kids in class. Prozac makes violence, believe it or not. And then they're giving it to dogs now, and it creates more problems. So when I get to my dad's house, you know, I'm full of piss and vinegar, and my dad's like, you know, 1 income in the house, 5 kids. There's not a lot going on. Right. We work for what we've got. That's, you know, a lot of my built up integrity was from him and from my grandmother and from the military. And I'm like 12 or 13 years old, and I'm back talking to my stepmom, and my stepmom and I don't get along at all. And she treated me like a second-class citizen. However, there are rules for a reason, you know, and I'm disrespecting my stepmom, and I'm like, I knock over my little brothers. I'm just being a moody, emotional teenager. Right. And my dad gets home. My dad's like an inch taller than me, 240, 230. You know, he's working construction. He's a stout man, wrestled. And he said, all right, let's go outside. I said, okay, Dad. And we go outside, and he's like, hey, you want to disrespect your stepmom? You want to knock over your brothers? You want to be a man? Let's go ahead and fight. Right. He beat the shit out of me and said, this is not your role. Right. After I wiped the dust off, he said, this isn't your role. Your role is to protect. Right. Your role is to provide and preside over this house. If I'm not here, you're here. Right. I don't care what she says. You need to respect it. Right. And your brothers need you to lead them. Right. And that, like, again, all of those things happen for a reason. They happen in life so you can learn it, so you can teach it, so you can give it. For sure. And I think that we're in a position right now. And like, I think, you know, making a community, like I've reached out to tons of dog trainers because I think this is important.
And it's so stupid. None of them want to do anything. I'm an open book, dude. I'm like, hey, I'll host a freaking a symposium at our facility. Like, let's get all the St. Louis dog. Like, I even created a St. Louis dog trainers Facebook page just to get everybody together for referrals. Yeah. Hey, you know, watch out for this person. Right. You know, here's a scam that's going around. Right. Nobody interacts. Yeah. Nobody wants to talk. Nobody wants to help each other. Yeah. Unless it's behind the scenes.
I got to take.
Right.
But it's give.
And that's like, so when I met you and I was like, dude, jump on my podcast. Like, let's have a conversation. I'll give you all the content that we create. Like, I don't care. Like, let's change the perception of dog trainers, right? We are both dog trainers in the St. Louis area. Yeah. We both own our own businesses. Yeah. But here we are talking, having a great freaking time. Yeah. Now, unless you like, when we're done, you like walk out and start talking shit about me on your Instagram, which I doubt you would ever do. But, you know, but there are people that would do that. Yeah. They come in here and be smiles to your face. And as soon as you walk out, oh, Tommy's a piece of shit. Yeah. You know, he doesn't know how to train dogs. Stay away from him. All of his stuff on his Instagram is a lie. Like, dude, I'm like the most blunt, non-sugar-coated person in the world. Like, it's all I want you to do is be successful with your dog. Yeah. Now, I have to make a living, but I want you to be successful.
Well, and if you can, because this was something that I ran into when I immediately left that place that I was training at. And they would do 30-minute lessons, and the owner would be like, tell the dog owner, the owner of the business would tell the dog owners, if you want to take notes, write fast. And I'm sitting here going like, this guy's a dentist and this lady's an accountant. They don't train dogs. Right. What are you doing? Right. What is our goal? Our goal is to create successful relationships with 100%. Human and the dog. And so I type out every lesson that we do together. Yeah. I have a template that I use to send to every client that I work with. So that way they have written copy of what we talk about in that hour lesson. Yeah. Then there's also a video link. So on my YouTube channel, I have unlisted YouTube videos, and it's all the commands that I teach. From the link. Right. Yeah. So if you have that link, you can get in there. Yeah. And then even if you go to my YouTube channel, it's not I mean, it took me a lot of time to edit these things because with my 2-year-old and not sleep, it's like I got to find time to do this. But all of my YouTube videos are lessons.
Yeah,
that's what they are. So people can see exactly what I do when I work with dogs. And one of the trainers, the head trainer that helped me at this other place, she was like, "Oh, don't do that. They're gonna send it to their friends.
So what?
Let them." If they send it to their friends and the friends do it, they get to help their dog, and then they refer me and my business because they got help without paying.
Well, and that's so. We'll probably wrap it up with this, but
sure.
I give away. So I believe in kindness, right? Giving without any thought of repercussion or giving any kind of comeback, right? I give a ton of dog training for free for rescues, all that kind of stuff. One of my mentors told me like. And I'm bad about it, and I'm trying to change it. I hate social media, which is why this is fantastic. Because literally, I come in here, I record, I'm done. They handle the rest of it. I don't have to worry about it, right? Because I hate sitting down and editing for 2 hours, and then, oh, well, did I miss anything? Oh, that dog bit me, and I had to hang him, so I should probably cut that out. Or, maybe I won't. Maybe it'll, whatever the case, right? So I feel like I lost my train of thought. Where was I at?
we give rather than take. So you could literally, and this is what we're going to start doing here in the near future. I just got to record the cameras and the mics for it and stuff like that. We are literally going to create free content that is going to piss off the entire dog community. Yeah.
And just give it away.
Right.
Not charge for it.
Yeah.
Just give it away. Because here's the catch. They're not you. They're not me. They don't have the decades, the time, the experience to do everything correctly.
Yeah.
Anybody can teach their dog to sit.
Right.
Anybody can teach their dog to come.
Yeah.
Those are easy. Behavioral things are different.
Yeah.
But even with the basic stuff, it's time.
Right.
Most people nowadays, we're so hubble bubble and fast and everything has to be done instantaneous.
Yep.
It doesn't matter if they can or can't.
Right.
They're still going to come to you.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's so many gatekeepers out there in the dog industry that they don't want to share stuff to help people or other trainers because apparently there's a new system created every month that my system's the best system out there and I can train anything.
Right.
It all comes back to the same thing.
Right.
So don't be afraid to give shit out, man.
Well, that was something in my personal training business that I experienced with other trainers.
Yeah.
Like I would sit down and look at people in the face and I'd start my closing pitch for their training. I would say, you can Google everything that I'm about to teach you.
Yeah.
You can do it all on your own. You don't need me. It's going to cost this amount to train with me. But what I am going to provide you is accountability, discipline, structure, and everything that you really need to do the right thing. But you can Google all the other stuff.
Right. The nuanced stuff.
I'm not creating anything new.
No.
I'm just providing you a direction.
Right.
And
that's why it cracks me up with all the purely positive, oh, this is all science-based and this is stuff that, it's new modern day training. Like, you're not training dogs.
Yeah.
You're really not training a dog.
Right.
You're treating the dog.
Right.
You're giving them rewards for nothing.
Well, you never see dogs in those videos. If
true too.
if their
show me.
Training worked,
show me.
Then show us.
Yeah, 100%.
Show us this working in a park setting with a bunch of dogs. Show the perfect heel with the treats.
Right.
With dogs around.
Without the treats, because that's the real test.
Right. But I'm saying that that's their approach. Right. So show us it working.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I've been doing this now actively for about 3 months now. This podcast. We're about to release it because I finally have enough episodes that I've challenged, like I've invited purely positive people that go on my Facebook page, like, come on, let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
Like, you guys have created such a divide in the dog industry. Like, let's find something like mutual grounds, or let's talk. Why are we so divided?
Right.
Because it doesn't make sense to me, because I use positive reinforcement more often than I use negative reinforcement.
Yeah.
But I have to set boundaries.
Right.
You don't set boundaries. And if you do, it takes forever, because you have to have a deliberate training plan that cannot have any glitches. You can't make any mistakes. You have to have impeccable timing, a highly charged marker, and all these other things that your owners are never gonna have.
Right.
So you're setting the owners up regardless for failure because you can't even do it yourself because you can't hold yourself accountable. You don't have the consistency.
Yep.
It's dumb.
Yep.
Anyway, so dude, thanks for coming on. I've had a blast with you. How can people get a hold of you? What's your Facebook, Instagram, website?
SkySoldierDogTraining.com. That's it. So Instagram, Sky Soldier Dog Training. Facebook, Sky Soldier Dog Training. That's it. So,
awesome. You got a phone number?
I don't know off the top of my head.
All right.
That's
no worries.
They can always go there.
Yeah. All good. All right, guys. Catch us on the next one. Thanks.